Every new year arrives quietly, carrying fireworks, resolutions, and the promise of forward motion. Yet for some, it also brings a softer, heavier feeling. A sense of standing still while the world seems to move on without them. They scroll through celebrations, milestones, smiles frozen in photos, and feel an unnamed distance growing inside. Not jealousy exactly, not sadness alone, something more complex. A quiet grief for time. 4 paths not taken, 4 versions of life that feel just out of reach. This is the psychology of people who feel left behind every new year. The feeling rarely announces itself loudly. It arrives in small, ordinary moments. A calendar flips, a message appears, new year, new chapter. Fireworks bloom across screens, followed by lists of goals, engagements, promotions, relocations, reinventions. And somewhere in the middle of all this motion, a stillness forms. The mind begins to count years, ages, missed markers. Comparison does not always feel sharp or bitter. Often, it feels quiet, reflective, almost polite. It asks questions that sound reasonable. Shouldn't life look different by now? Wasn't this supposed to be further along? The new year carries a cultural script, one that suggests life should move forward in visible, measurable ways. Progress should be public. Growth should be noticeable. Happiness should have evidence. When that script does not match someone's internal reality, a subtle dissonance forms. That it is not that others' joy causes pain. It is that their timelines begin to feel like mirrors. Social platforms amplify this effect, compressing entire years of human experience into a few celebratory moments. Achievements float without context. Struggles are edited out. Time appears orderly, linear, fair. It creates the illusion that everyone is moving at the same speed, toward the same destinations, but human lives are not synchronized like clocks. Still, the nervous system responds as if they are psychologically. Comparison activates the brain's threat and evaluation systems. The mind scans for position. Where do I stand? Because belonging has always depended on relative safety within the group. Falling behind once meant vulnerability, exclusion, risk. So, when the new year highlights distance between expectation and reality, the body feels it before the mind understands it. A tightness in the chest, a heaviness behind the eyes, a subtle urge to withdraw. This is why the feeling can be confusing. Nothing is technically wrong. Life is continuing, yet something inside feels paused, delayed, unfinished. The quiet comparison is not vanity. It is not weakness. It is the mind searching for orientation in time. But the problem is not the question it asks. It is the assumption beneath it that life should unfold according to a shared schedule. And as the new year begins, that assumption becomes louder, even for those who have learned to ignore it most of the time. Because the calendar does not just mark time, it marks expectation. And when those expectations remain unmet, the silence they leave behind can feel like being left behind too. Long before the first new year felt heavy, time had already learned how to speak to the nervous system. In childhood, progress was measured constantly. Height marks on doorframes, grades, birthdays, praises that arrived when something was achieved, improved, completed. Love was not absent, but it often appeared alongside movement. Doing well, growing fast, becoming more. Slowly, quietly, the mind absorbed a message it never consciously chose. To move forward was to be safe. For many, early attachment experiences shaped this belief. When caregivers were emotionally available during moments of success, pride, or visible development, but distant during stillness, confusion, or delay, the child learned to associate worth with progression. Time stopped feeling neutral. It began to feel evaluative. Even in supportive homes, cultural narratives reinforced the same idea. There was a right age for milestones, a correct order for life. Falling behind was not openly condemned, but it was subtly feared. Questions like, "What do you want to be?" or "Where should you be by now?" carried expectations disguised as curiosity. These early patterns do not disappear. They mature by adulthood. The child's need for approval becomes an internal clock. Each year is unconsciously measured against imagined versions of the self who they were supposed to become by now. When reality does not match those internal timelines, the nervous system reacts with a familiar sensation: the fear of losing belonging. Psychologically, this is not about ambition, it is about attachment. Feeling left behind is often rooted in a fear that stillness equals abandonment. That if growth is not visible, love, respect, or safety may quietly fade. This is why the emotion feels so personal. Even when no one is actually judging, unmet milestones can deepen this wound. Delayed careers, relationships that ended instead of began, dreams postponed by survival, responsibility, or circumstances beyond control. Each delay reinforces the belief that time is slipping, away, that the self is somehow failing to keep up. But the origins of this feeling are not flaws, they are adaptations. The mind learned early that timing mattered, that progress protected connection, that being on track meant being included. These beliefs were not chosen, they were absorbed through observation, silence, and repetition. So when the new year arrives, it does more than signal change. It activates memory, not conscious memory, but emotional memory. A deep, quiet recall of every moment when waiting felt unsafe, when falling behind felt lonely, when time felt like something that could leave without you. Understanding this does not erase the feeling, but it softens its meaning. Because the weight carried into each new year is not about laziness or failure. It is about a system that learned, very early, to equate time with belonging. Time does not exist in the brain as a simple sequence of days. It exists as meaning. Neuroscience shows that the human mind does not experience time objectively. It experiences it emotionally, stretching moments of pain, compressing years of routine, anchoring identity to memory and expectation. The brain is less concerned with how much time has passed and more concerned with what has happened within it. This is why milestones feel so powerful. They provide structure in an otherwise abstract experience. Graduations, careers, marriages, achievements, these moments become psychological markers. They tell the brain a story. This is where you are in life. Over time, identity begins to attach itself to these markers. Age becomes a scorecard. Progress becomes proof. That social comparison deepens this attachment. The brain is wired to evaluate relative position, not out of insecurity, but survival. Historically, knowing one's place within the group meant knowing access to resources, protection, and belonging. Modern life has transformed this instinct into something quieter but persistent, measuring life against others to assess safety and worth. The new year intensifies this process because it creates a synchronized moment of reflection. Everyone pauses at once. Everyone looks back. Everyone looks ahead. The mind interprets this collective pause as an evaluation point. Where am I now? How far have I come? How far behind am I? These questions are not always conscious. Often, they appear as sensations: restlessness, heaviness, numbness. The nervous system compares expected progress with lived reality and registers the gap as threat or loss. Cognitive psychology explains that humans struggle with nonlinear time. When life does not unfold in a clear sequence, the brain searches for reasons. It looks inward. It assumes causation where there may only be complexity. Delays become personal judgments. Detours become failures. This is compounded by what psychologists call the end-of-year effect. Temporal landmarks like birthdays or New Year's create a sense of endings and beginnings. Even when nothing externally changes, they heighten self-awareness, self-evaluation, and identity questioning. For someone already carrying unmet expectations, this effect can feel overwhelming. The brain does not register the year as simply another cycle. It registers it as evidence. Evidence of time passing, evidence of standing still. But this perception is incomplete. The brain favors visible outcomes over internal development. Emotional growth, resilience, survival, quiet endurance, these do not register as progress in the same way achievements do. So when someone has spent years healing, adapting, or simply getting through, the mind may still label that time as lost. The psychology of time is not cruel. It is limited. It was never designed to measure human depth and movement. And when the calendar changes, that limitation becomes painfully clear, because the feeling of being left behind is not a reflection of reality. It is a reflection of how the brain simplifies a life too complex to fit into years. There is a conflict that rarely shows itself openly. It happens inside. On one side, there is understanding, the awareness that life is complex, that progress is not linear, that everyone carries invisible struggles. This voice speaks softly, reminding the self that survival counts, that unseen growth is still growth. On the other side, there is pressure, sharp, persistent, impatient, a voice shaped by years of expectation and comparison. It asks why things are not different by now. It questions effort. It doubts worth. This is the inner tug, war. Psychologically. This conflict emerges when compassion and conditioning collide. The mind may intellectually understand that timelines are unfair, yet the nervous system still reacts as if falling behind is dangerous. Knowledge does not immediately undo emotional learning, so the self becomes divided. One part wants to rest in acceptance. Another part refuses, fearing that acceptance means giving up. This is where shame quietly enters, not loud shame, not dramatic self, but a low-grade background shame, the kind that whispers you should be further and others would have done better. It does not scream. It lingers. It creates distance between how someone feels and how they believe they should feel. This shame often leads to emotional masking. People smile through New Year gatherings. They offer congratulations. They post neutral messages or remain silent altogether. They convince themselves they are unbothered, but the effort to appear unaffected is exhausting. Emotion regulation. Research shows that suppressing emotions increases internal stress. The body holds what the mind avoids. Tension builds quietly. Fatigue deepens. The feeling of being left behind becomes heavier because it is carried alone. There is also resistance in this tug-of-war. Resistance to fully acknowledging the pain, because acknowledging it feels like admitting defeat, like confirming the fear that time has won. So the mind stays busy, distracted, rationalizing, minimizing. It's not that bad. Others have it worse. Next year will be different. Yet the feeling persists not because it is weak, but because it has not been met. This internal conflict is not a sign of failure. It is a sign of depth. Only those who care about meaning feel this tension so acutely. Only those who value growth struggle when it seems delayed. The pain exists precisely because the self is invested in becoming something more than survival. But until the tug-of-war is recognized for what it is, not a personal flaw, but an internalized struggle between safety and self-worth, it continues. Quietly draining energy. The feeling of being left behind is not sustained by time alone. It is sustained by the fight against the feeling itself. And every new year, that fight briefly becomes harder to ignore. Recognition often arrives quietly, not with fireworks, or clarity, or sudden insight. It comes as a small pause in the rush of thought, a moment when the tightness in the chest is noticed, when the heaviness behind the eyes is named, when the mind finally admits, I feel left behind. Naming the feeling is the first act of presence. It transforms abstract discomfort into something tangible, something that can be observed. The mind, for once, does not argue. The body, for once, does not resist. Psychology calls this metacognition, awareness of one's own mental state. Philosophy calls it self-attention. Both recognize a quiet power. Noticing without immediate correction reduces the brain's threat response. The nervous system begins to soften. The ache no longer feels like proof of failure, but as a signal of something deeper. In this moment, there is space for perspective. Not the perspective that demands change, fixes, or resolves, but the perspective that simply sees, this is how it feels to be here. Now, the new year continues around the person, indifferent, moving forward, and yet, inside, a subtle shift occurs. Acknowledgement does not erase longing, or fear, or shame, but it allows them to exist without judgment. without the compulsion to measure, to justify, or to compare. For some, recognition comes with tears, a sigh that has been waiting for years. For others, it is a quiet exhale, almost imperceptible, as if the body had been holding its breath for decades. It is not a solution, it is a beginning. Awareness transforms isolation into presence. It whispers that the self is not failing, merely experiencing. That being behind is a relative measure. That even stillness carries meaning. The moment of recognition is also the moment when internal dialogue softens. The harsh voice that demanded proof of progress grows quieter. The longing for external validation begins to feel less urgent. A gentle understanding emerges. Time is not the enemy, and being left behind is not a permanent state. Recognition is not dramatic. It does not signal immediate change. It signals acceptance, small, subtle, profound. It opens the door to a new relationship with time, with self, with belonging. And it is from this doorway that the mind can begin to consider a different kind of forward. Forward no longer needs to be a race. It no longer needs to be measured by calendars, grades, or social markers. Redefining forward begins quietly, in small moments of choice. A pause before judgment. A willingness to notice what has grown, even if it cannot be seen on a resume or in a photograph. A recognition that survival itself is progress. Psychology reminds us that self-compassion is not indulgence. It is a recalibration of the mind's internal evaluation system. By allowing oneself to exist outside rigid expectations, the nervous system relaxes, tension softens, energy is reclaimed from comparison and anxiety, and invested into authentic experience. Redefining forward also involves reclaiming the meaning of time. Life does not need to unfold according to a universal calendar. Detours, pauses, and deviations are not failures. They are evidence of resilience, adaptation, and learning. Each year becomes a collection of experiences, not a scorecard. For some, this may look like small acts, saying no without guilt, acknowledging growth that others cannot see, creating rituals that honor personal rhythm rather than societal timelines. For others, it may involve reframing long-held beliefs about what constitutes achievement. Either way, the emphasis shifts from proving worth to noticing presence. The internal voice that once criticized for being behind does not vanish overnight. But with time, it softens. It begins to speak in curiosity rather than judgment. Where do you want to go next? Rather than why aren't you there already? In this space, the self can integrate conflicting emotions. The longing for progress, the ache of comparison, and the gratitude for survival. Forward becomes less about acceleration and more about alignment, aligning choices, attention, and presence with what feels authentic rather than what appears socially validated. Redefining forward is also relational. It transforms how the self perceives others. Milestones no longer provoke envy or judgment, but offer perspective. Everyone's journey is different, and recognizing this creates empathy, reduces isolation, and diminishes the sense of being left behind. This chapter is not about erasing pain. It is about inviting a gentler rhythm, a rhythm that honors the past without being trapped by it, a rhythm that allows movement without the tyranny of comparison. Forward is now measured in moments fully lived, in breaths consciously taken, in small steps toward a personal horizon rather than a societal checklist. The new year arrives again, quietly, as it always does. Fireworks bloom, resolutions are whispered, calendars reset, and somewhere between the celebration and the ordinary, there is a different rhythm, one that does not demand comparison, achievement, or validation. This is the rhythm of presence, of noticing life as it unfolds, imperfect and uneven, of witnessing both what has passed and what is to come. Without judgment, for those who have felt left behind, this year may not erase old weight. It may not suddenly align paths with the imagined milestones. But it can offer something subtler. The realization that being behind is an illusion created by expectation, not truth. Time is not a linear race. It is a river, bending, widening, narrowing, carrying each life in its unique current. Some moments move swiftly, some linger, Some reverse, ripple, or stagnate. All are necessary. All are human. There is beauty in unfinished stories, in plans that shift, in dreams that arrive late, in the quiet endurance of those who persist without recognition, without applause, without measured proof. The new year then becomes less a marker of success or failure. It becomes an invitation to witness one's own journey, to honor resilience, to recognize growth that is invisible but real, to step forward, not in comparison, but in alignment with what matters personally. In this view, being left behind is not a permanent state. It is a fleeting sensation, a mirror of internalized pressures, a call to It does not define worth. It does not measure value. And as the year begins, there is a quiet possibility that life can be enough, even when it does not match the images or stories others display. That progress can be subtle, measured not in accolades or tournaments, but in presence, insight, and continued becoming. The new year can be a companion, not a judge. A gentle witness to the unfolding of life, imperfect, unfinished, deeply human. A reminder that every moment lived fully is a milestone in its own right, because the calendar changes, but being human remains, and in that, there is quiet grace.